listen to the tale of my undoing. Let this be my testament and confession. 10th Street was restless, my feet were listless, and our Heavenly Father on a 3-day bender in his flophouse heaven. My self-respect had gone for a pack of smokes and wasn't coming back. So I went to call upon my cousin Jack and his roommates, who were biblical. Brenda, who was typical, had eyes of poison ivy and a middle finger that said, "Try me." She was 7 months along and had been for years. Lee was fused to the couch in a permanent state of fear, lighting one smoke off another and poaching her liver in bootleg gin till the juices ran clear. Oh, and Brad, well, he just lived inside his sleeping bag, toasting hash on foil and weeping into a rag since his girl run off with a biker from Temiskaming. Oh, and then there's me. Yeah, I'm the tune you hum when nobody's listening. See, I'm the type of person who carries his parents with him on his shoulders night and day. Allow me to explain. Desperation clung to Dad like a coat of paint, whereas miracles were Mom's department, provided she didn't feel faint. Allow me to elaborate. The smell of anger hung about Dad like pheromones from a gland, and he knew violence like the back of his own father's hand. Whereas Mom sutured me up with a sewing needle she wielded like a sword and remained in the red in the bank books of the Lord. Welcome to our place in the muddy middle of Mudtown. Mudtown. Stench of a tannery, controlled anarchy, the type of place where down and outers go out and down. A monopoly board abandoned mid-game with every house on that shitty light blue strip of $100 properties, and you don't pass go without a shiner or a fat lip. Or you don't give peace a chance without a tax receipt, and you're better off knitting booties for the feet of Mississauga rattlers as you are asking for justice. A place where night doesn't fall, but lets the day withdraw as a condition of armistice. A place where hope is important, provided you packed it before dark. And parks were for dandelions and delinquents to take root. A place, in other words, where we only believed in 4 things. Namely, 3 chords and the truth. And there I was in the middle of it all, looking for beauty to stain me in the shape of some sort of grace. I was done with the human race, and only accidentally myself. Drinking, because it's always 9 a.m. somewhere in the world. And repenting, because it's always midnight everywhere else. I'd only learned to trust the dusk, when the evening can grab the day by the hem and yank it off like a tablecloth. See, I needed someone to prove to me that if I was lightning, I wasn't just striking down, but that thunderbolts can also rise from the ground. And then there she was, an angel, dragging her wings through puddles and wearing a hangover like a wedding dress. She sat in the bus station parking lot, jacketless, laughing at the frozen constellations and all your notions of sin and salvation. She had a Zippo lighter for a grin, and for a heart, a hand grenade with a pulled-out pin. Her eyes were 2 shots of grenadine, and her hair a conflagration of insurance claims and gasoline. Now, she had this thing about her of Buddha's pothead brother. But I could tell. Some storm had broken her oak. Some blowdown had lowered her willow. For when I say she had a faraway gaze, I don't mean that she was pondering existence, but that her eyes were really 10 feet in front and she was chasing them off in the distance. I mean, she had an ear so low to the ground she could hear the sound of a grave. I mean, she was a set of Russian dolls that nested so deep the last one was the size of a sand grain. And she had clearly bruised her ego when it had fallen from the swing set in her brain. She piloted her consciousness between Charybdis and Scylla. Her id on vacation on a permanent binge. A macaque on her back the size of a gorilla, and her ivory arms bored by the brace and bit of a 26-gauge syringe. Oh, you know me. I've got enough of my own jugs of confusion, of guzzling my own mugs of stupefaction. I have no time to open up the water mains for folks who pump oblivion into their veins. But you see, I couldn't keep going. That would have been like ripping bandages off, taking chest hair with them. And the trap kid in my heart beat a weeping cowboy rhythm in country waltz time. So I stopped. No, not so much to stare. Well, you couldn't help it at that pyrotechnical hair. In sheer awe of someone meditating there, as out of place as a peacock on the tundra. Hands in her lap in Dhyana mudra, as if enlightenment were a thing to be found back of a dumpster in Owen Sound. Well, the look that she gave me fogged up my glasses and left me trapped like a fruit fly in molasses. My innocence and ignorance were on display like sausages in a butcher shop window. Hey man, got a smoke? She asked it in a paisley voice that left no choice but to answer. How best to describe that music? A mile north of oboes and a block south of piccolos. She sounded like the very first crocus of spring to pierce the winter's tired snows. Well, she was out of luck. I mean, I used up my last, burning through a pack, smoking off my desperation before 10 hours of desolation on the foundry floor. And when I say the cat got my tongue, I mean he swiped it from my mouth and batted it under the door. Sorry, was all I could say. And I know I should have walked away to be my own deadbeat ex, but I couldn't leave her. Not like that. A young goddess prone to old mistakes, without the benefit of a crimson cape for ID purposes should it come to that. A babe in the woods surrounded by wolves in Granny's bonnet. She was sore in need of a garden and lumberjack. So I did what you normally do in these types of situations. I took her to Vern's Donut Villa. Ah, good old Vern's. Well, in case you don't know it, it's the type of place that's got walls the color of Hank Williams' coffin. It's the type of place where conversation goes to die. And cabbies cough on dog-eared murder books while cops shovel home mummified wedges of pie washed down with coffee, cold and deadening as a spade of wet sand. We shook ourselves clean of the dust of the dark, and she told me her name was Susan. And she spelled it with an exclamation mark. Soon she had me laughing against my will at tales of San Fran and East Van, of popcorn bowls full of anonymous pills, and a van full of pranksters in a merry band, dropping acid in church confessionals, sleeping in boneyards, and getting knocked up at folk music festivals. Bound by her spell, I drank both our cups, while the words sprinted from her lips faster than the meanings could keep up. I, in turn, taught this interplanetary elf everything there was to know about my earthbound self. About how family was a garment so tight I needed a broken bottle to cut it off. How I was the worm in Dad's Adam's apple. And how he laid landmines in the kitchen till we learned to love the taste of shrapnel. How Mom was a medieval saint serving guilt on a silver salver, murdered on a mound of dirty laundry she used as an altar. I told her about the practice I had in playground law, bullying the bullies despite my own crystal jaw. I told her about all the sunsets and sunrises I never get to see from the floor of Kennedy, and how 2nd Avenue holds me down by the collar, so I've got to keep a couple of dollars and a bootlegger's number in my pocket for a Mickey of rye that could pickle me in on the day that I die. Well, I mean, she listened to me prattle and patter. And it was then that she undid the flesh of her breast to reveal the jumbled contents of her heart. That tumble-down rummage sale of general issue emotions, but with massive aftermarket modifications and warranty violations. She had cut the umbilicus to the little girl who was her crumpled first draft, and erected a drafty mansion inside her cerebellum, where the maggot of her appetites could devour the parchment and the vellum she scribbled her thoughts down on in a graphomaniacal frenzy. See, she had a bend sinister, a pull to the left, because so little went right in her directionless world. And for all that she was friendly, the bodies of her friendships piled like sparrows in the counterfeit sunlight of office tower windows. And she was reviled in equal measure as she was treasured. And so she often sought to jam the mainspring of her life's quickening clock, and wandered bruise-colored badlands till the crowing of the cock, glared at by the dry eye of the moon, covered in self-inflicted cuts, like a Renaissance Jesus exposing his 5 holy wounds. She was a yin-yang of opioid bliss and coked-out aggression, dancing barefoot over fishhooks to collapse on a mattress of antlers.
Flower